Okay, go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, guys. For those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name's Amanda. I'm one of the dietitians with the program. So welcome to this webinar. We're going to distribute these PowerPoint slides after, along with related materials to your email. It may go to the spam mailbox, so just a heads up, but you can always contact us at 631-638-0537. So today we're going to talk mostly about sugar. And of course, sugar is is a carbohydrate. We'll get to that in a moment. We're going to go over dietary sources of sugar, some goals and recommendations relating to sugar, how to read the label and interpret the total carbohydrate, fiber, and sugar section of the label, as well as the ingredients for sugar, as well as some factors that impact cravings and how we can control those and set realistic goals for managing our sugar consumption. But when talking about sugar, we must first go over carbohydrates, as sugar is a carbohydrate, right? So when you're looking at the spectrum, to the left, you're going to have your more complex carbohydrates. To the right, you're more refined, the ones that are more likely to have these added sugars in them. Now, the definition of a carbohydrate means that it quite literally breaks down to sugar, or its synonym term, glucose, which is the smallest molecule in the body that a carbohydrate can break down to. Our culture tends to kind of demonize carbohydrates and putting them in this like bad category where we put morality to food, which is not necessary, where this diagram demonstrates that there are healthy carbs like fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Beans and legumes are also going to be a little starchy or rich in carbohydrates, but also have some protein. But also you'll see here on the right, more of that white starch, like breads or sugar sweetened beverages that we want to be mindful of. So it's not so much that the item is a carbohydrate and that it contains sugar. It's more so seeing the food for also the benefits that it can or may provide to the body, where the foods on the left are what we're going to call more nutrient dense in that it has fiber, right? They're complex carbs, those fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, and legumes. So that fiber makes us feel full. Also, it's going to have plenty of vitamins, minerals, and what we call phytonutrients, which is what gives plants their pigment, right? So then as we go on to the next slide, you're going to see foods that contain natural sources of sugar, like those healthy foods I was saying before, like fruit. And then on the right, you'll see those less optimal choices that are more so added sugars. So with natural sources of sugar, we want to be mindful, like we touched upon last session, of pairing our carbohydrates. And we'll go more in depth on this pairing concept later on, but they don't make us really feel full by themselves, right? Like a glass of milk, a slice of bread, a vegetable, a fruit, right? If we have an apple, it's really going to probably hold us over more so, probably about for 30 minutes. But, ooh, can everyone see me? It seems that there's some, oh, here we
You're
go.
good. We just had someone join in.
That's why. All right, excellent. Can you guys see my screen still?
Yeah, it just exited out of the PowerPoint view.
Oh, perfect. I'll go back in.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. Sorry. Okay. So these foods on the left, they don't really make us feel very full on their own, but we should highlight that they're high in nutrients and we want to consume them, right? It doesn't mean that we want to avoid fruits. I get a lot of questions on like, are carrots good for me or bananas? I hear my doctor say they're high in sugar. Yes, they contain natural sources of sugar and they should be balanced or paired. So apple peanut butter or having some avocado on some whole grain bread. That's what's going to make us feel full. Where on the right, we can see there's lots of hidden ways that sugar gets snuck into our food, like in the form of sauces, ketchups, dressings, cereals, that we want to be conscious of reading the label and reading the ingredients of what's going into it. This form of sugar is going to be less of the natural form, which is like fructose or lactose, and going to be considered like a sucrose, like a table sugar. So you'll see lots of like white sugars, brown sugars, honey that come from the sugar cane or sugar beets that are then therefore processed and added to foods. One should note that although honey is one of the healthier sugar additives, and we can get to that in a little bit, it is still considered an added sugar. Same with agave. And it doesn't matter if the sugar is sugar in the raw, in the brown package versus the white sugar. In the end, sugar is sugar is sugar. It all breaks down to glucose. So then we have, what is a serving of fruit? So back to what I was saying about bananas. We want to be mindful of having a true serving of fruit. So like one medium apple, but it's important to note that a banana is 2 servings of fruit. Our goal is to try to take in between 2 and 3 servings of fruit per day. And yes, that is true for diabetics as well. You want to also make sure that you're pairing your fruit to make you feel more full. Fruit is a great way to honor your cravings, which we'll get to later as well, as you want to not avoid a sugar craving if you're getting them. You want to try to satisfy in more healthful ways, of course. Then, of course, we'll move on to what are our sugar goals and recommendations. So you'll see here, if the mouse is working, that I'm pointing at the 36 grams per day and the 25 grams per day. Not to say that sugar should never be included in the diet. We have to demonize all carbs, avoid, and restrict. That's the last thing that we want. Like I was saying, we want to also include and honor our cravings. So men can have upwards to 36 grams per day of added sugar. That doesn't count natural sources of sugar. And women can have upwards to 25 grams per day of added sugar in the diet. What does that look like? What does that interpret to, though? Is 1 teaspoon of sugar equates to 4 grams of sugar per day. Or sorry, 1 teaspoon of sugar equates to 4 grams. So when you're looking at the food label, it's just a good visual to consider and to take in, okay, if I'm having some yogurt at breakfast, today I wanted to splurge a little bit and have the Chobani with the key lime flavor versus doing the vanilla low sugar. That's going to have some more added sugar in. So at night, I'm not going to go, splurging too much on like having 2 to 3 scoops of ice cream. Maybe I'll honor my craving in a different way and have like a Yasso bar instead. And we'll get to this sweet swap concept, but it just should be something that we're mindful of how much we're taking in and reading the labels in full. Now, you're going to have more healthy sources and less healthy sources too. So notice how I mentioned taking in the added sugar in the form of, say, like a Greek yogurt versus in taking in the sugar from added sources like a candy. I want to also touch upon why we care about sugar too in the first place. Sugar can cause different issues, like we may have heard the term insulin resistance, which can put us at risk for diabetes. Insulin resistance is just where our body is having this inability to lower our blood sugars down, typically below 100 milligrams per deciliter, that fasting blood sugar. You want to try to have under 100. Above 125 would be considered within diabetic ranges. Increased added sugars in the diet does put us at risk for diabetes, as well as different liver conditions like cirrhosis and liver failure, and especially weight gain. And it does affect our heart. If we have sugar circulating in the bloodstream, it can cause little scrapes along those blood vessels where we have our immune system come in to attack those scrapes and build up, similar to like a scab, this atherosclerosis that hardens the arteries. So that's how sugar impacts heart health. If you guys have more questions about that, I would love to go in more depth at the end of the session today. Also, to be mindful that sugar can come in the form of beverages more often than not. Even milk is something to be conscious of, that often milk will have natural sources of sugar in it and can be upwards to 12 grams of sugar, that maybe it's more mindful to have like an almond milk instead, where you'll find that it's closer to like 1, maybe 2 grams of sugar. So reading the label is something that's really important that I want to get to now. Of course, you always want to look at the top first. What is our serving size? What's the number of servings per container? Pause there for a moment after reading that. Okay, is 3 cookies realistic? Okay, in this situation, if I'm trying to have a sweet swap, it's a more optimal cookie. Okay, but I'm going to try to make sure I pair that with a protein or healthy fat, because 3 cookies in the grand scheme is not going to make us feel very full, right? So we'll get to that more pairing in a little bit. Get down, we look at the calories, of course, fat, cholesterol, sodium, which we'll be getting to in other sections. But now we're looking at total carbohydrates. So just to give us like a frame of reference, 15 grams of carbohydrate is considered like an exchange or like a slice of bread. Now you'll have fiber below it, right? So you want to subtract from total carbohydrates the dietary fiber to get our net carbohydrates. So there's a total of 21 net carbohydrates on this label. So I just subtracted the 2 grams of fiber from the total carbohydrate. That's how much sugar is actually in this product. It's not necessarily 12 grams, but more so 21. Now, it's not added sugar though. However, it's 12 grams of added sugar. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on avoiding the added sources versus just saying, oh no, it's sugar. Let's stay away from it in totality, because that's very unrealistic and it sets us up for restriction, which doesn't really hold us to our goals. It's just important to be mindful of how much we're taking in. So in terms of added sugars, you want to try to stay in the single digits as a good rule of thumb. And then pairing too, which is saying, okay, is there at least 7 grams of protein or 5 grams of healthy fat? Yes or no? Then I need to pair it with something else like nuts or seeds, avocados, or having even like a hard boiled egg. So when you want to understand why are these added sugars coming in, what's the source, you want to look, of course, at the ingredients. These 46 names for added sugars are something that I would say take a picture of, have on your phone as like a little cheat sheet to reflect back on when, especially when you're in the grocery store trying to read the labels. But my favorite little tip is if it ends in OSE, it's likely a sugar. Remember how I was saying glucose, like OSE, glucose enzyme, right here? That's to indicate it's a sugar. You'll see like galactose or lactose up here. That's a sugar. Now, this can also be something that you will be surprised when reading the label for even various like cereals, you'll find add a lot of extra sugars into their ingredients. If you see sugar within the first few ingredients, as of course they're in a order of the most to the least on the label, it's better to avoid if you see cane sugar as the second ingredient or caramel as the third ingredient, because it's likely that as I go back, those added sugars are going to be much higher. Then let's put this all into practice, right? So on the left, we have the Nesquik. On the right, we have the Dairy Pure. Both are considered like our milk options, right? Of course, if you look to the left at the Nesquik, it's going to have 18 grams of added sugars. And then on the right, the milk is going to have 0. I know the label is a little hard to read for the milk. You'll see it's just milk and vitamin D3 it's been enriched with, where on the left, the Nesquik, where are those added sugars coming from? You could see right away that second ingredient plainly written out is sugar. So of course, we want to try to avoid the Nesquik. And if we're going to have a milk, maybe opt for ones with less added sugars. I'm also going to promote more of like an almond milk or like an unsweetened almond milk, unsweetened soy milk, cashew milk, for example, oat milk. Those are also great alternatives. And although we're not talking about dietary fat so much, they are going to be lower in saturated fat, which can affect our heart as well. Next is, let's talk a little bit about making the right carbohydrate choice so that we're avoiding these added sugars. So you want to look for, on the top right, you'll see that Whole Grain Council logo. That's just a good quick cheat sheet to tell you, okay, it's considered a whole grain. And you'll see that percentage up there. See how it says 100%. It'll say 50% for some or 75%. So it's giving you a guide to how much fiber might be included in the product, where you'd want to flip it over, look at those total carbs, look at that fiber, and look at the added sugar in particular. A good goal for fiber is a minimum of 2 to 3 grams. More is always good though. Then some ways to cut down on total sugar in the diet is switching out different white products for more whole grain products, right? So our white rice for brown rice, or quinoa, which is also a complete source of protein, switching out rolls, maybe going for a slice of bread instead. It's okay to say a slice of bread over a wrap on occasion. The reason why I wanted to highlight that serving size of a carbohydrate or an exchange is about 15 grams. In a meal, you can have between 3 and 5 servings. And think about it. You've got your half your plate vegetables, 1/4 protein, 1/4 of starch. So that's where all those different healthy carbs come from. And you want to balance it out because if we're not getting enough of that good stuff and the fiber from those carbohydrates, the more likely we are to go for the foods that have those added sugars, like the sweets, because we're not feeling full or satisfied. And our body and our brain need sugar to survive, quite literally. That's when we start getting that hangry feeling or that fatigue feeling as if we're going too low in sugar. So making sure it's the right choices and it's balanced, especially with fiber. I don't know why it doesn't want to scroll.
Maybe exit out of the.
Yeah, I had to exit out and go back in for some reason. So to further expand upon that balancing out concept so that we're more likely to go for quote unquote like whole foods versus these processed sweets, you always want to pair. And the first thing is to try to eat 3 square meals per day, 1 to 2 snacks, right? Eat when you're hungry. Because if we're going too long without eating as well, greater than 4 or 5 hours, your body relies on carbohydrates to stay awake, stay alive, stay thriving, right? So when we go too low and our blood sugar gets too low, you're fighting yourself physiologically because your body is going to start to crave sugars and sweets because that is the quickest thing to break down and utilize for energy in the bloodstream. So when, for example, we go too long, then speed of eating goes up, mindfulness goes up, the likelihood of making a better choice goes away. On top of that, too, of that pattern of trying to eat every 3 to 4 hours, you want to have balanced meals and snacks and try to pair, right? So this balance concept is very cliche and redundant. You always hear, oh, everything in moderation, balance your diet. Okay. What does that mean? So if we're having a food that doesn't really have fiber, protein, healthy fat, and that food's gonna enter our stomach, not take much to get broken down, and then it gets absorbed into our small intestine, where it eventually that sugar is gonna get dumped into the bloodstream because there's no fiber, no protein, no healthy fat binding with it to slow it down. So you're gonna see a spike more like this in the red, right? And this red is not just to mimic apple juice, but also those white carbs, right? Or sugars or sweets, juices in particular, sweetened coffees, especially. Caffeine will also do this when paired with sugar. So we go high for what's high for us and we come crashing down. This is where we feel kind of crummy at this low point. We're often hungry. We're not often feeling the greatest. So we're just going to keep going for that high again. So instead, it's better to have this fiber or protein healthy fat because it's going to take that sugar. Now it's going to enter the bloodstream more slowly, right? So it makes us feel fuller longer. But an apple's not really going to do all of that work, as you can see. Pairing it out with a protein or a healthy fat, as indicated by the peanut butter, is going to hold us over longer, make us feel fuller longer, but also we're more likely to burn it off and give our body more time to burn it off. And your body's releasing less insulin to have to get that sugar down. So it's also better for lowering your blood sugars over time. So that's why we really say pair your protein, healthy fat with a carbohydrate is more so to control our insulin spikes, control our blood sugars, so we're leading a happier, healthier life, and then therefore that also decreases our waist circumference. But going back to this concept of honor our cravings, you want to give in a little bit. It's not this whole like willpower approach to diet. Oh, I'm going to blame myself and I need to just get through it and eat some kale chips. No, that's not what's going to make something a lifestyle, right? So you get a sweet craving and oops, sorry, this phone was ringing. So if you're getting a sweet craving, it's better to try to say, let me have something more natural with less added sugars versus something else, right? Like a ice cream or a cake or a processed cookie. So the concept of nice cream is mixing some Greek yogurt with some frozen fruit together, and you can mix in different nuts, nut butters, what have you, get creative, dark chocolate. We're also going to send you some added sweet swaps after today's group education session. So there's going to be packaged items on there as well as quick recipes, because often these quick cravings can come on and we're not going to turn around and say, let me go make a recipe all the time. So it's important to plan, right? So you want to put these items on your grocery list because, like I was saying, it's unrealistic to say, oh, I'm just going to willpower through it. That's when we're more likely to, call up Uber Eats or go run to 7-Eleven. Having the sweet swap available and knowing consciously, okay, well, if I'm craving Thin Mints, what about the mint chocolate chip Yasso bar instead? So it's meeting yourself halfway and still giving yourself a taste of what you're looking for. Fight temptation with preparation. So understanding these sugar cravings, it's normal, and some potential reasons, like I was saying, if you're going too low, right? If your blood sugar is going too low, your body's going to crave sugar. If we're stressed in our culture, stress is food, boredom is food. So this concept does apply to emotional eating as well. It's trying to say, am I hungry or am I craving as well? Because if it's a craving and we're not physiologically hungry, then maybe we can replace with something else. And it's great to have a list of alternative solutions on your refrigerator, like going and, calling a loved one, going for a walk, petting the dog, a puzzle, some tea, stretching, yoga, etc. And we're going to attach that today with some other alternatives. And if you are physiologically hungry, those sweet swaps are a great list also to have. So it's asking yourself, am I hungry or am I craving? If you're hungry, do the optimized choice. Sometimes you might have to say, I'll give myself a smaller portion, like a scoop of ice cream is also considered a sweeter swap, especially when you're trying to check in with your goals and say, okay, in totality, compared to last week, if I'm having a bowl of ice cream every night for dinner, then maybe every other night is a realistic place for me to start. So then also going back to this restriction concept, just please, the biggest thing Katie and I see all the time are individuals who try to have themselves go on almost like a fad diet, and they hold themselves to these unrealistic expectations. And it starts with being kind to yourself. It's unrealistic to say, I'm never going to have ice cream again, or I'm never going to have cake again, or sugar again. So you have to work with yourself. And also it's important to reach out to us if you're ever having questions or concerns with issues like this. We love to walk you through and give you more personalized feedback as well. So starts with that positive mindset, like I was saying. It's not, I failed, I have no willpower. It tastes good. I'm honoring this craving. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to move on. It doesn't mean the rest of the day is a wash, right? Like sometimes in our culture, it's this all or nothing mindset that, okay, I had ice cream, so during the afternoon, I stopped at the ice cream truck. Well, my day's already ruined, so I might as well have pizza for dinner tonight. No, your morality is not attached to food. Food is neither good nor bad, and we are neither good nor bad based on what we eat. I told myself not to eat carbs, and I just ate a whole box of cookies. Where the other positive affirmation would be, with full permission to choose whatever food I desire, I can eat reasonable amounts of cookies when I want them. It's when we have this guilt associated with food that it's like, let me go eat this on the side. And then it's like we eat quickly because it's like we don't want to acknowledge the fact that we're having it. It's okay to write it down in the food journal. And it's not a point of failure. It's not to sound like a hippie, but it's a journey, right? And if something trips us up or we have a moment where things are not as smooth, it's great to have a mindful pause and say, well, what can I do better next time? Or did I really need those? Did I go a long period of time where I was really restrictive? And you know what? I can just get right back on that horse. I have dinner coming up later. I'm going to optimize it. I'm going to make sure I have lots of veggies on my plate and I choose some lean protein sources. Next is recognizing what you're feeling. So check in with yourself throughout the day. Are to make this a lifestyle, it's not so much that it needs to be a conscious, food on our mind, but looking back at the day saying, did I eat enough today? Did I eat my usual routine? Do I have breakfast, lunch, dinner? Oh, I skipped lunch. Okay, that's probably why I'm craving food tonight. I didn't get enough calories earlier in the day. My body is physiologically in need of more food. When was the last time I had water? So our hypothalamus is what registers thirst and hunger, and our body doesn't care if that water is coming from food or seltzer or tea or water or what have you, right? So if you're thirsty, it's really easy to get confused as hunger. So that's where this concept of drinking water before a meal is good. Not so much to get full, it doesn't really work that way, but just to make sure that we need, that we're fully hydrated. Also, sleep. If we're tired, our body gets kind of confused as well between tiredness and fatigue from needing to sleep versus fatigue and needing food. So if you're saying I worked an overnight shift last night and yeah, I'm pretty beat, maybe taking a 20-minute nap will do you more good. Listening to your body and checking in. And most importantly, if you're hungry, eat. Please eat. Especially checking in with our emotions is next. So address physiological needs. So I'm not so hungry after I just assessed my body's needs. So I don't know why I'm going for these foods. Okay, is there a certain emotion going on? Yeah, I just watched the news. I was stressed. Oh, and then there was a stimulus. I saw that Arby's ad with that awesome sandwich. Now I want to go make that sandwich. So understanding the triggers and the stimuluses that are involved in our day to day, and then saying consciously to ourselves and getting to that mindful position where we're able to recognize before the splurge even happens. Oh, I'm stressed out. I know this is a trigger. Or, oh, I'm bored. I know this is a trigger for something sweet. Let me go and call a friend, or let me go, paint my nails, or take a nice long shower, complete some brain teasers, do some Sudoku. And like I was saying earlier, it's a journey. This is not going to happen overnight. Even if you have a binge and you were able to recognize after the fact and reflect and say, oh, it was because I was stressed, that's still progress. And it's just trying to notice it earlier and earlier before it even happens by being mindful and assessing your routine in your day. And sometimes the first place to start, if we don't have a routine, is focusing on eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, 1 to 2 snacks. Then, if, like I was saying earlier, if we are hungry, we should make the more mindful choice. So, yes, if you're craving sweets and you're hungry, maybe having some nice cream instead, or having the yasso bars, or some of those skinny dipped almonds where it's the dusting of the chocolate with maybe even a side of dark chocolate or some peanut butter, or doing like a fruit smoothie. So giving into that temptation a bit, honoring your cravings, and making sure you're pairing so you're feeling full from that optimized choice. Giving yourself SMART goals. So, like I was touching upon with that simple example of if we're having ice cream every night, it's not realistic to say, oh, I'm never going to have ice cream again. So, if someone's having ice cream like 5 to 7 nights per week, a SMART goal, which stands for specific, measurable, actionable, or I like to say achievable, realistic, and time bound goal, could be, well, if I'm at 5 to 7 nights per week that I'm having these sweets, maybe it's more realistic for me to aim for 3 to 5 times per week and trying to track that from there. Maybe keeping a small, written log of what we're eating just to make the food choice more tangible, what we ate, approximate time, and approximate portion size. Calories, protein, carbs, all that. It's great to track and know, but it's more so about jotting it down and making the choice tangible or real. So it's easier for us to track and understand, and like in SMART goals, measure our progress. If we don't know what we're eating, then we don't know what's realistic for us to expect of ourselves, right? So something we see every day is this all or nothing mentality. Of trying to avoid that, checking in. This also applies with physical activity too. So yeah, if we're not going to get that tough workout in, we don't have time for that, going for a 15-minute walk may be okay instead, right? So it's that same concept of, all right, I'm taking in 50 grams of sugar per day. Realistically, it's not going to be likely to get down to 10 grams of sugar per day by the next day, but maybe meeting ourselves at 40 grams of sugar instead, and then forgiving ourselves, because it is a journey and it is never linear. I've never seen someone just have no problem starting from point A to getting to their goals in point B. People falter, and we're human, and that's okay, because we learn from ourselves. And remember, in the end, it's just, how can I be a little bit healthier today than I was yesterday? How can my present self help my future self? And keep chipping away. So if anyone has any questions, now is the time. Please let me know. Brianna and I can also answer these questions.
And I muted you guys, so you have to unmute yourself if you have questions. Can I add something?
Yes.
I just want to say, like, sometimes, like, yeah, we say, like, make the healthy choice, like, have the
Sometimes just give in.
Yeah, like, have you ever seen, like, oh, I'm gonna be healthy, I'm gonna need an apple, when really you just wanted chocolate, so then you ate an apple, and then you ate a granola bar, and then you ate a yogurt, and then so then it was, like, way more calories and sugar had you just not,
just eat the chocolate at that point. Yeah.
Like, just had the Reese's cup at the beginning. So you know what to do when the time is right, to just think about that, the next time. This is more so for, like, night eating and emotional eating that we wanted to target. So just saying, sometimes it's okay to just do the damn thing and eat it and then move on.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be lying to you guys to say I don't eat a few, like, Hershey Kisses per night. You know what I mean? Or some sort of chocolate. It's what gets me by and prevents me from being restrictive. We all have our own personal things that help us. And it's nothing to feel guilty of. It's just food in the end. Does anyone have questions about the label or sources of sugar? I know that can be a tough area. Or, like, what did I mean by total carbohydrates versus net carbohydrates? I know I threw a little bit of a thing out there, a ball out there.
Hi, Amanda.
Wade, how are you?
Doing good. Again, I'm finding with the sugar, like a couple nights, I'm finding now almost a craving. Like, one apple's not enough. I'll have two. The other night I had an apple, and then, like, 45 minutes later I had an orange.
Mm-hmm.
Am I experiencing sugar cravings with that, or is that okay?
Well, what I would want to say is, I know that you eat, like, throughout the day in an organized manner, like every 3 to 4 hours, but when that situation comes in for some, that's the first place to check. But I think what could be happening in your individualized situation is having that apple, that's just the fiber, right? As the carbohydrate, but there's not like protein or healthy fat coming with it to help it to bind so that you feel fuller longer. So that's kind of like, let me go here. This diagram where you're having this occur, where it's not holding you over long enough. So if there's, like, a protein or a healthy fat that you'd want to pair with that it would help to bind you more, so you're not going for that other option later on, and you're feeling more satisfied with that snack.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, having some peanut butter with it, or some nuts, or, like, a hard-boiled egg, or having even depends, like, say you're having Greek yogurt with, like, the banana, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does, but I guess it's just, I'm not. It feels like I guess I'm eating for the craving as opposed to adding the fat.
Like, it's not making you feel full, is what you're getting at? Or you feel that you're not physiologically hungry, but you're going for the fruit instead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Because it's like, this is happening to me at night. I'll have an apple as a dessert late. Me and my schedule, 10:30 at night.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a craving, like, less than an hour later for another piece of fruit.
Yeah. And it's that self-reflection moment, and saying, okay, I know in this moment I'm going for the fruit, but I'm not hungry. I'm going for it more so out of habit, or something else is driving it too, right? Like, we were talking about, like, how earlier how food can be boredom, could be stress, could be anything going on. Food is love, food is relaxation, food is everything in our culture. So if we're finding that we're going for something and it's not hunger, it's what else is that stimulus? It could be the habit in the past, or it could be an emotion, and then you want to replace it, right? So it's unrealistic to say no, 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 no. And it's good that you are already onto that phase of optimizing the choice. But being that you're not hungry to have it, it's more so trying to say, okay, am I going for this because, you know, it's the nighttime. Like, I know I get bored at night all the time, or, you know, you're watching the news, you get stressed or something. There's some sort of stimulus, and then it's replacing it. So if it's boredom, having other activities to go towards. If it's stress, having some stress relieving activities to go towards. Like, sometimes just taking a long shower is the best thing. You get out, you brush your teeth, and you're ready to go, and you don't really want to have that other option because you're like, I just showered and I just brushed my teeth and I'm not even thinking about that craving before.
Okay.
All right. Well, guys, we're gonna send out the slides and send out the materials as well. But the biggest thing is to note and to check in with oneself. Am I hungry? Am I craving? Hunger, it's going to come on more slowly as the stomach gradually empties, as the food enters the stomach and gradually leaves. And then cravings are going to come on quick, and there's usually a stimulus. Cravings are usually for something very in particular. Hunger can be usually for anything. So checking in, craving versus hunger. Hunger, if that's the case, optimizing the choice. If you're finding it's not hunger and it's more so craving, replacing whatever that stimulus is with, you know, other activities instead. And you find that, you know, once you do those other activities, you start to forget about the craving altogether.
Great.
Excellent. All right, guys, be well. Enjoy your afternoon, okay? And we're going to
Thanks,
send that email out
guys.
shortly, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.